First off, let me say that's very disrespectful. They didn't have to keep my man Radabon like that in front of my man Tigrex. Well, by Tigrex, I should say. But regardless, here we are nevertheless. Tigrex is... He's not even a brute weapon. He's actually one of the few monsters out there that's known as pseudo weapons, because in which they have 4 arms, 4 actual arms, like 2 front hands, 2 back legs, but their wings actually come from their front arms. Tigrex is like this, Nargacuga, Barioth, a few others, I believe. Anyway, Tigrex is a flagship monster from Monster Hunter Freedom, I think? Freedom 2? I can't remember. He's a 2nd generation flagship monster. There's Monster Hunter Dose, and there's Freedom 2, I think, then Freedom. I don't know. I'm not a 2nd generation hunter. I was 1st gen, skipped 2nd gen, moved to 3rd gen, but he's a flagship monster from back in the day. He is a PlayStation one though. That excuse me, a PSP one. That much I remember. It was him and Nargacuga that are PSP flagships. Then you have Kush, who's a PS2. Regardless, in this game, he first makes his appearance here in the Rotten Vale, where he's just ravaging the place. Now, I will say this, from what he used to be to what he is now, this is one of the few monsters that they did not actually change too much. There's a lot of things about him that is actually very much the same. Slow progression, slow evolution of his character. A lot of the attacks he does is the exact same. Different things, different, what do you call it? Like additional effects, if you will, have been changed slightly. The most notable to this is his very slow 360 tailspin. That attack used to have so much chip and knockback that it was beyond ridiculous. Now you can just kind of guard through it, no real big issue. I essentially do it in here as well. Not a really big deal. It is kind of it's kind of weird though, because the entire time I've ever played this fought this monster, I've always had to respect it way more than any other attack in the game, essentially, because I did note that attack, if not taken into great consideration, would either chip you out or push you into a situation where you didn't really find too appealing. However, because they push you back so much and there's lots of recovery for the monster himself, I would essentially sometimes put my weapon away and then run away and heal or something like that. I would wait for him to do that attack if I knew I was getting kind of if I was kind of sketchy in terms of health, but not enough to die from a chipped out by chip. I would use that point to actually heal. However, that's that. Now, his biggest thing is to run rampantly. Okay, that is his thing. He rushes relentlessly. That's him. Okay, he's the closest thing to a brute weapon that a pseudo weapon can get, much like how Diablos is the closest thing to a brute weapon that a flying weapon can get, where in which they just run at you and they do everything they can to smack you down. He doesn't necessarily have combos like certain other monsters, but he gives you little time to pause. So he'll charge at you in one direction, spin around on a dime, charge at you in another direction, spin around another dime, charge again. He has certain feints when it goes to this, like he'll fake his charge, like he'll 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 kind of jump at you. Sometimes it gets me. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes it does get me. Back in the day, he used to have that same thing. He would feint at you and then he would jump, like he buck at you, and then he would just leap. It would get me sometimes. I'd be like and then I'd get smacked by it. I don't think he has it in here. If he does, I probably haven't fought him enough to actually see it, because there's every now and then you'll fight a monster which has an attack that you rarely see, or there's something that they do that rarely actually comes out. One of these monsters in particular, I can think off the top of my head, is Dalamander. He's a monster from the 4th generation. He actually can paralyze you, which I thought in the very beginning was kind of weird, because his weapons gave you paralysis that you had to awaken, but he didn't have any paralysis attacks. Well, if you actually touch his fangs from his mouth, if you ever get to that point, it can paralyze you. See, it was one of the things you don't really know until you accidentally run into it. Another one of those attacks that very well may be that Tigrex himself does have, so just watch out for the feint into the jump. Now, other than that, I will say this: in order to actually counter this, you're going to have to be very good on either blocking or dodging. The thing is, since he runs in a very linear fashion, his hitbox isn't too wide. You can probably still get away with it. I would recommend, though, if you're like the one skill I would recommend if you're not like guarding, evade extender, because it's going to help you, because like I said, he runs in a very linear fashion, straight in one direction, straight in another direction, straight in another direction. Granted, that straight line will be towards you no matter where in which you are actually located. Evade right out of the way. Sometimes he'll end his charge, he'll charge 3 times. Sometimes he'll end his charge with a jump, sometimes he'll end his charge with a bite, sometimes he'll end his charge with a spin. So those are things you have to actually look into as well. On top of this, I would make a note for this, but they nerfed this into the absolute ground. This is the one thing that they changed about my man Tigrex. This is the one thing. Tigrex is one of the very few monsters whom of which his roar can hurt you. Like his just roar. Okay, he would roar and that roar would hurt. The very initial roar, once he engages you like on sight, doesn't hurt you. That's a thing that's always been a thing. It never hurt you in the beginning. However, every roar after that, whether he gets enraged, whether he just gets mad, whether he just wants to roar, that roar can hurt you. The range in which that roar hurts you in this game has been dropped significantly. I mean, ridiculously. You will probably not get hit. You'll fight him 4 or 5 times and not get hit by it. And be like, Dak, well, what are you talking about? His roar doesn't hurt you. There's a very small sweet spot that does hurt you. So it used to be a very wide, I think 270-degree radius around his exact body that would hurt you. Now it's a very, very, very small radius. Like, very small. Like, really small. Like close enough to kind of smell his deodorant kind of small. It's ridiculous. I'm not a huge fan of it. I thought it was a huge bummer. But then again, they probably did this to exemplify another monster. I'm going to go out and say it. Brute Tigrex is in this game. And Brute Tigrex, in his inception, his biggest thing was to absolutely and emphatically use that roar to hurt you. Like, his roar also hurts, but his roar hurt even more. And he used it a lot more often. He used it as the means of an attack. And they do that in this game for Brute Tigrex. I'm guessing they try to separate them just enough to make them like different, where in which I guess it's okay, but his entire lifespan has been known for him to be using his roar, and then he just wouldn't use it willy-nilly. He would just, whenever he would roar and it would hurt you. Whereas Brute Tigrex, my man is roaring all the time. Earplugs is not helping from this. You can have earplugs and still get hit because it's still an attack, so don't really put too much stock in the earplugs if you think you're going to avoid the damage that the earplug, or excuse me, that the roar itself can give. Now outside of that, because he's a very linear monster, just pick at him whenever you can. I know it sounds very dumb, but literally pick at him whenever you can. If you're fighting him in the story, he will turf war with Odogaron. Let them turf war. In this particular hunt, I think it happens 3 times. Some ridiculous amount of times in which he turfs with Odogaron. That's why this video itself, well, not the video, but the fight itself for me was actually quite long. So with all that being said, that's essentially Tigrex right there. Let's talk about his gear. Because we talked about like his history and how to fight him and so on and so forth. So let's get to the gear portion of this, of course. Okay, so for the Tigrex armor, let's take a gander. Unfortunately, at the time of recording, I didn't actually make the Tigrex armor. I was going through a huge slump in Monster Hunter. That's why this video is like 2 weeks after my last Monster Hunter video, 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. So I hadn't played Monster Hunter at all. But I need to go and make this armor for the next video, of course. So I'm gonna have to actually run it. But regardless, the Tigrex armor is pretty good looking, I'll admit. The beta and the alpha versions are both, in my opinion, very good looking. Very fantastic armor to have on both male and female characters, if you're wondering. It looks great. I'm a huge fan of the design. I'm probably going to make both full-on sets, truth be told. Now, for the skills itself, well, first talk about the weakness. Weak to that of Thunder. I should have still spoke about this a long time ago in another video. Weak to Thunder and Dragon. The one thing you should always remember is that Tigrex is essentially just like, his weaknesses in way are just like that of Rathalos and Raytheon. They have the same exact weaknesses. It's weird, but they do. It's one of the things I will always remember about this monster, so that way I don't forget. It share the same weaknesses. Granted, more akin to that of the Raytheon than that of the Rathalos, because the Rathalos eventually becomes immune to that of Dragon, whereas the Raytheon is always weak to Thunder. Anyway, now to the skills, you have Tigrex Essence. The set ability gives you free meal secret. What it does is it allows you to have a 75% chance of maintaining the item that you just used. So let's say you take a potion, you have a 75% chance of that potion not actually being used, which is amazing. A godlike ability. So let's take a gander at it right here. Activate 75% of the time, meaning gives a predetermined chance of consuming a food or drink item for free. So yeah, that's actually very, very, very good, especially since you also couple that with speed eating. Let's say you actually have free meal 3, speed eating 3, and wide range maxed out, I think it's 3. You are a support champion. So you can use the set as support set if you like, or you can use it as a very rush down heavy set because you're not really worried about like your health too much, because you can speed eat and you can heal yourself if need be, because it also gives you plus 4 points to it. And I mean, what is just 3 more points into attack? You can do that for free. Essentially, everyone has enough slots for this. You can just put the talisman on. You could gem it in. It's free to get attack 7 with this, so that way you can actually have all the attack for this set that it can give. And then lastly, we're looking at earplugs, max all the way out nullifies weak and strong monster roars, meaning no monster can like smack you in the face with their roar. However, the term of actually getting smacked in the face with a roar, you can still be susceptible to, i.e. a Tigrex roar, or a brute Tigrex roar, or any other monster actually roars and damages you. I think there's a couple others I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, the beta set is very similar. You still get the free meal skill, the hidden one ability, but you don't actually get the free meal, which is weird. You have to actually gem it in yourself, but I guess, you know, I don't know. It's weird that they give you the secret, but they don't give you the skill itself. So you have the ability to have more, but you don't have the skill to do it, to utilize it. Odd. Nevertheless, you get earplugs 4, which is 1 less than 5. Yeah, 1 more than 3. Then you have attack boost 3 and speed eating 3, which you still keep, which is kind of nice. But of course, as always, because it's the beta, you do get a bunch of slots. You get some level 4s in there, so it's kind of cool. However, I would personally run a nice mix between the two. The ones that you probably wouldn't use, but once you get the free meal ability, I kind of would probably run beta and essentially everything else. Just because I feel like it would work out a little bit better, because instead of just getting 1 slot here, you get a 4, you know, that kind of thing. But that's the armor. Now, as far as the weapons go, the weapons, they are very straightforward. They've been the exact same the entire time, well, for forever. However, I'm not gonna say they elude, but by the Tigrex weapons being awoken into blast element, it completely alleviates the fact that Molten Tigrex, which is a variant monster who came out in the 4th generation, will not be making a return. He was essentially a blast variant of Tigrex. Now, his weapons are very, very good. They have high attack, high sharpness, low affinity, and they're very much so raw weapons. So like his weapons, they have high attack early on. They do have about a -15 to -20 points to affinity. They have a lot of white sharpness. I'm not 100% certain if they go purple, but they are very strong weapons in terms of actual damage numbers. So if you want to run an elementalist set, those weapons might be sought after very early. If anything, I would probably run after them. If not, I'm not gonna lie to you, Kuliyaku has very good weapons in the same exact regard, but it is what it is nevertheless. But his weapons, in my opinion, are very solid. I like them. I use them a lot. I actually love using them with the Elementalist, especially with that in Handicraft. Gives you a ridiculous amount of white sharpness you can utilize. It's sad that it's not purple, but not every weapon in this game gets purple sharpness. But then again, having an incredible long amount of white sharpness is just as good, if anything. Especially when you don't have to sharpen and your attack stat is actually just that high. So with all that being said, let's say this about Tigrex. So Tigrex, he's a good monster. He's a good throwback. He's a monster that a lot of us probably do remember, probably don't remember. That's okay. A lot of us do remember him actually. He's a very tough monster. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. He's not an easy monster. Not quite a gate. Oh, he's definitely a gatekeeper. Not quite a bad guy, definitely a gatekeeper. You fought many monsters like him before. You fought Barriot, you fought Nargacuga. Heck, you've probably even fought Diablos up to this point or another, or essentially many other different type of brute wyverns out there. So you kind of have a feel for the charge happy, throw his body at you type of monster hunting style, attack style if you will. But I will say that he himself is a little more different than others in the regard that, I mean, he's a little smarter of a fighter than other monsters who are kind of like him, like brute wyverns. He's a little smarter than your average brute wyvern. Probably not as smart as that, like of maybe Brachiotos, something like along the lines of that. But he's still a very efficient fighter. He does have a relatively linear attack style, I will say, so that can kind of be utilized against him in a certain regard. But once you do complete that and you do start to like grind him out for gear and everything, it's definitely worth it because his gear is actually pretty nice. It looks good. It plays well. I have a friend of mine who actually mixed the brute Tigrex and the regular Tigrex set to the point to where once he did that, he has yet to actually use any other set in the game because he has everything he really wants in an armor set. So I'm actually really happy to hear about that. So essentially, when you do get the brute Tigrex, when you do, which is MR 70, you might be able to mix regular and brute together to come up with an amazing set that you yourself might actually run for a very long time. I know I'm probably going to do the same thing, maybe not with my lancing set. I already have a set that's like that. I'm not going to spoil it for you to actually just tell you what it is, but I do know exactly what I'm going to be running with it, especially my gun lance set. I don't ever think my gun lance set it's rock solid. I don't think I'm ever going to change my gun lance set. I love it to absolute death, but it has spoilers in it. I'm not going to really get into that. But nevertheless, Tigrex, he's a monster you have to respect because he's going to rush you down very heavily. He's a rush heavy kind of monster. He's a very tough monster. It's not a freebie. This is not coming at you for free. But once you do actually understand what he's doing, understand his patterns, you can essentially do away with him in a ready fashion. It's just he's a very tough monster to just get into because he is so rush heavy and he does not stop. But with that being said, it's been your boy. Take care.